What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Cast a Podcast on the YouTube version. If you're listening on the App Store, welcome into almost the 30th episode of this deal, and we've been kicking them off every week now in 2021. About a quarter of the way through the season, we started doing this. And if you don't know, I'm Ronnie Moore, and I'm joined by Jessie, my kind of counterpart at BASS. Lives down in Birmingham now, was a part of the Bassmaster Live crew and doing the bonus coverage, and is doing it big up in Birmingham. Kyle, welcome in, and we're going to talk about fantasy fishing like normal, but instead of recapping the event, we did that in our last episode. We're talking our fantasy fishing picks for our 5-angler Rapala team, and then we're going to talk about Drain the Lake for Neely Henry, which I know you live now live by the Coosa River. Neely's probably going to be one of your more home lakes, one that you're going to get a lot of experience with, but it's going to be a new stop for the Bassmaster Elite Series. So Kyle, you live right down there in the ground zero, I guess, of where stuff's going to be taking place, at least in maybe the epicenter of it.
I'm excited. I know a lot of people will view this event after Fork as almost a letdown, which I think is entirely not, reasonable. But I've been more excited for this event since the schedule came out than maybe any other event, purely based on the fact, like you said, this is my newly adopted home river system. I actually have not fished Neely Henry, but I've fished basically every other Coosa River lake aside from Neely and Weiss. But I'm really excited for it. I mean, I think they're hitting it at a good time. Obviously, some variables going to be mixed in like there always is. But I mean, I think they're going to hit it at a good time, and it's going to be entertaining fishing. It's the kind of fishing that I know you love to do, I love to do, and it's fun to watch because it's close combat. A lot of fun ways to catch them.
Yeah, and it's a little different because, yes, the Coosa River can get dirty and whatnot and have muddy water, but a lot of the river systems that we go to, not counting the Tennessee River because that is a giant river made up of a lot of lakes, whereas the Coosa River seems more of like river fishing. At least every lake has a river portion to it where it's current-based and it's really set up like that. The Coosa isn't a tidal river system. We always go to a Winyah Bay or a Sabine River, those types of places. We've been to the Red River in the past for the Elite Series, the Chaffalaya Basin, a lot of dirty water, shallow, catching largemouth, tough fishing. Coosa River, though, is always a pleasure because, yes, it can be a letdown in weight compared to Lake Fork, our last event, 112 pounds, 5 ounces. Basically, every lake in the United States for an Elite Series event would be a letdown because if you break the century mark, I mean, you're just at a special venue. So maybe a weight letdown for sure, but strategy, species as well. We're going to have spotted bass in play. Yes, we had some show up at the Sabine with like Brandon Card specifically, but it's going to probably be about 50-50. We're going to see largemouth and spotted bass, and I believe thinking about the schedule that we've had, this is really one of the only ones that has spotted bass, and they should factor in this year. And so, Neely, like you mentioned, there are 6 lakes on the Coosa River system. Starts at Weiss, top the northeast corner of Alabama, right there, just across the Georgia border. And then from Weiss, it goes Neely Henry, Logan Martin, Lay Lake, and then it goes Mitchell and Jordan, I think, or Jordan and Mitchell, one of the two.
Mitchell, Jordan,
Mitchell and Jordan. And so there's 6 lakes there. They're all somewhat vastly different, but there's a lot of characteristics that can be similar. We got to see Neely Henry play for the Bassmaster Opens in 2020. Tough fishing in the fall, but we did have a stretch where we got to visit 2 Coosa River lakes. We visited Lay Lake to end the Eastern Opens and to end the whole Bassmaster Open circuit, and we had Neely Henry. I believe it was the last stop of the Central Opens. 2 tough venues at a tough time of year, but like you said, early May, it should be a little bit different. And Kyle, I'm surprised you don't have your umbrella out right now, even in your apartment, because it has been pouring down rain in Alabama, and it's going to continue to pour on Tuesday of practice as well.
It's definitely been raining plenty. I got caught out in it myself. I went to Lay Lake today, and it was nice until about an hour and a half, 2 hours into fishing. I turned around my shoulder, and here it comes. And I got poured on. I know those guys did. If you kept up on social media, those guys were all basically having to duck and cover from the lightning and the storms. And it's definitely thrown what I presume is going to be a curveball to the anglers. I think just like basically every professional tournament, if you just had consistent weather, it would be really good. But naturally, we never get that. And the Neely Henry event's going to be no different. It's going to be some switches up with rain and everything. And I mean, but the reality of it is, guys are still going to figure it out. They're going to figure out a way to catch them, even if it's different than it would have been 3 days ago.
And the power of social media is I know here in Little Rock what's going on in Gadsden, Alabama, where the event's going in. And
right.
The bad thing about social media is that all our Elite Series pros post the same thing. If you're down at the St. Johns River, everybody's posting a manatee shot. At the Tennessee River in Knoxville, they're posting their temperature gauge to show how cold the water was. Pickwick, they're talking about the crazy current and the logs floating down the river and the dirty water. The Sabine, if you saw a gator, so did everybody else. And then you get to Lake Fork, and it's like they're just showing giants or they're just showing like beds off and whatnot. So this week it's been the rain picks and the meteorology and the forecast.
Right.
But it is something big. And it could change the fishing up for a positive. Normally when we're at this point in the season, you're wanting to look at sight fish and whatnot, but I feel like in Alabama, it's going to be more moving and just fishing. And it's going to be a good time of the year just for that, for fishing. Some people could sight fish, but I doubt that would be any kind of prevailing thing. When you think about the pre-spawn early rains in the year, it's cold and those rains dirty up the water. So then you have cold, dirty water. It's pretty bad. Now, when it's starting to get warm, it's wanting to get to the 90s. That rain holds it back a little bit. Maybe that current flow speeds up, and that's going to be the big deal this week is the current flow. And hearing from a lot of the Alabama guys that I'm friends with, I asked them what it was going to take projections-wise before Pickwick for the Open. Some of those guys fished the Open. I asked them, and then they followed it up and volunteered stuff yesterday evening and said, with this rain coming through, we could see some bigger bags possibly pop up. Not a consistent 4 days of bigger bags, but you could see that day 1 liter weight, or you could see a bigger bag than we'd expect with more generation and flow coming through there. And so I don't know if you could speak to that, what it was doing at Lay as quickly as the water might rise, but it's supposed to rain 1.5 inches tomorrow, roughly, over Gadsden, Alabama. It said like 1.45 inches in the span of all day tomorrow. So a lot more water coming in, and that's going to help Alabama Power be able to put some more water through all of the lakes and have that consistent current flow, or at least windows of time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like you said, it definitely will add current. I guess, the biggest thing that comes to my mind, and I don't know how Neely Henry acts compared to, like I said, some of the more southern Coosa lakes that I'm, used to fishing. Say used to fishing. I haven't only been fishing them for a few months, but
the ones you have some familiarity with.
You're right. I think obviously water clarity is going to be a big thing. From my experience on Lay, a lot of times when you get these big rains, some of the backwaters, the longer creeks, they'll get muddied up. And I mean, maybe some people would agree with this, disagree. It's just a matter of preference. I think that sometimes it'll get tough when those waters, those backwaters and the sloughs and, that kind of thing get dirty this time of year. It seems like some of the things that play pre-spawn don't play as much post-spawn. But, like you said, the reality of it is the current more than likely I would think would help. But it definitely is going to make it interesting. It's another one of those tournaments that, you and I always talk about, the strategies that go into things and, some of the things that, an avid fisherman or somebody that loves following these tournaments is just going to love, because like you've mentioned before, like the weekend anglers, the guys that only get to go every once in a while, like basically you and I now, these are the conditions we almost always get faced with. It's never like, oh, we hit it just right on and it's just perfect. I mean, these are like the conditions that people want to see the elites face, because I mean, they go to Fork and the conditions are great. They're all on beds. 20 pounds a day was the average. Granted, that has a lot to do with the lake, but I mean, having changing conditions, I think in any tournament like Pickwick was so enjoyable to watch because those guys were having to adapt every single day. And I think we'll see probably some of the same in this event. It'll be interesting to see, how much better or worse it'll make it. But the reality of it is, it might not even notice a difference from practice to the tournament. There'll definitely be more water flow and things, but it's not like they had perfect conditions like they had at Pickwick in practice. And then by the time they got on the lake was just completely ruined. Like they'll get to see this kind of transpire for the next 2 days and kind of build a game plan. So it'll be interesting to see, without a doubt.
Yeah, and the water level that they wake up to Wednesday morning will be different than what they woke up to Tuesday morning. And then even Thursday for the tournament, they'll be able to tell at the ramp what it's doing, and that Alabama, the flow on their phones, they'll be able to check it and see when those windows of opportunity are. And one thing that I've noticed about these Coosa River Lakes, covering them, I covered Logan Martin on the water one time, covering Lay for the college bracket and the opens on Bassmaster Live, and then Neely Henry as well. Seeing the way these lakes go, when that water does turn on, those undercut banks, because it is a genuine river system for half of these fisheries. Half of Neely is a river, and then it kind of opens up into a lake, and they have got some creeks and traditional types of places to fish. But once you get above Gadsden and you go north, it's pretty rural, not a lot of docks, nothing like that. It's going to be just laydowns, undercut banks, little jut outs that'll make the current go different places. Probably some little high spots in the river. Like Logan Martin's got some high spots where that current's going to wash all the way down. It's going to go over that and then drop out. Schools official get on that as well. But it seems that when that water does start to generate from the dam, that those fish get up on the bank as close as they can get to. Obviously, the water level is going to go up and down. If the water's sitting here normal and they start letting a lot of water out of a dam, and it's that narrow of a fishery up in the river, it's going to fluctuate 2-3 feet at times. And sure, some of the lake will only come up 4 or 5 inches. It's much more stable down in the lake, but it's not nearly as, the feeding windows aren't as pinpoint. They could feed for 3 hours, not that great for a whole 3 hours, but up in the river, they could feed better than they ever would anywhere else in 10 minutes, and you can get right. And so I expect, and I've changed my fantasy team up. Well, I didn't change it because as Rich with Hella Bass always rags on me for not picking my team until the week of, I don't have preconceived notions of what I think is going to happen. And then I look at practice and it changes. I just sit here and I think about maybe some guys, whatever, don't really look at the buckets, don't even know who's in the buckets. And then we get to Monday and I start to see what the weather's going to be like, what the conditions are on the water. And then I can pick my roster. And so because of that extra water coming through, not that it's going to dirty it up or change it up significantly, but I'm thinking of Thursday through Sunday, what that current flow could be like, the projected, or what those anglers will see day to day. And I pick my team according to that. So you'll see a general theme when it comes to my team, and we reveal those in a few minutes. But I do believe that this time of the year is probably one of the best times of the year to have heavy rain, because those fish are active. There's shad spawn, there's top water, there's a flip and bite, there's early post spawn. Those fish might not want to feed, and this might make them feed because of those windows of opportunity are so good sometimes with the current. And there's a lot of other things that they could do down lake. The fish, you could probably catch some sight fish out of the current some. And so there's going to be a lot of different things going on that guys could use for a day or two, or maybe for all 4 days. So I want to get your opinion on that as well. But I've noticed in the past those undercut banks up the river, whether it's a jig, whether it's a chatterbait, whether it's a topwater, you got to get it stuck in the mud on the side of that bank and pull it off into the water seemingly, because they're going to get that shallow when the Coosa River turns on.
And I've seen that firsthand. And frankly, when I made the statement I just did a second ago, I hadn't really considered the actual river bite, but that's a really great point. Just comparing it to lay, and any Coosa River guy is going to watch this and be like, oh, you can't compare the two, and whatever. But that's just what I have to compare it to. That up the river bite, from what I can tell, looks very similar on most any Coosa River lake. I mean, it's pretty similar. And what you said should be spot on, because it really pinpoints those fish to something. Like you said, something to break the current, because they're not just going to sit out there and think about it. Like if you basically, if you had to live on a treadmill, or you could live like 2 feet to the left and not have to be fighting the current, obviously that's where those fish are going to be. And actually the Lay Lake Open that I got to cover this last year, granted it was in December, you say, how does that even compare? But it was the same thing. The guys that were catching them up the river was first thing when the current was running. I got to see guys like Jacob Walker, who I've become good buddies with, and some of those guys that are really good Coosa River Lake, hammers, really do exactly what you're talking about. Basically flipping behind wood, any anything that would break the current up, you could almost pinpoint and be like, there's a bite, there's a bite. And something that I've really based my picks on, and I'll also add on the fact that you being able to wait until the last week is a blessing. But when I write my pundit picks, and so does it was a week ago. So I mean, I don't typically change my picks. But with that being said, I went really fairly heavy on Coosa River guys. Some of which I didn't pick just because super high percentage. Shame on me. But I think that having the knowledge of how the Coosa River works and being comfortable with it is going to help big time because, like you were saying, almost every single lake, although they're very different in ways, they have similarities. And especially up the river, that style of fishing, it's, I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's very similar lake to lake. So some of your guys that live in Alabama and are Coosa River guys, I mean, like, those are probably the guys you should be picking, in my opinion.
And I'd say this, that I would have gone Alabama heavy too if, let's just say, it hadn't rained yet, but it was going to rain a lot on Wednesday afternoon, or it was going to rain a lot Wednesday with a short time of those conditions. And basically you're waking up Thursday to a new fishery or a new body of water where a Matt Herron or a Scott Canterbury or a Wes Logan or a Bill Weidler, they know, okay, well, it hasn't rained and now it's going to dump a bunch of rain and those fish are going to go here, 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 here. Whereas now they had rain on Monday, they're having rain on Tuesday, and then they have Wednesday of stable conditions. They can see it as it changes, and they can maybe go get bites places. Those guys will still have that advantage of a sneaky spot that they don't have to go practice. They know that that's there, but those guys will have time to explore it. And that's why I think that it opens it up more to a style than necessarily a knowledge-based selection of your team. And it's because they're probably biting very well compared to if it's earlier in the year and dramatic weather comes in, or in the fall when dramatic weather comes in, and it's like, I can't run around and get that many bites to get a sample size. Whereas now you could probably get a lot more bites and okay, it's pretty quick. I flipped 2 trash mats and they're there. I could go and do all these others, but I'm not going to, that kind of thing. So we'll see about how that plays out. And so I'm excited for it. The techniques we're going to be able to watch, a swim. You're going to see guys lock a swim jig in their hand, or a chatterbait, or a walk in top water, or a frog. I feel like you're going to be able to see guys flip docks down the lake. You're going to see maybe some, spinner bait, some different things like that. You're going to see all kinds of those power fishing baits that you're going to hook into a fish, and you're like, is this a 4-pound largemouth or is this a big spotted bass? Like, I don't know.
One thing I added in my story was I think that we're going to see a lot of braided line. That's kind of one thing that I'm looking forward to. Like you said, between frogging, obviously walking top water can kind of go both ways, but I'm
on a swim jig.
I mean, swim jigging. I mean, that's something that if you know anything about the Coosa River, you've ever heard about the Coosa River, according to Wes Logan, I can't prove this to be true, but you can catch bass on a swim jig on the Coosa River 365. And I know it's true. And it's such a dominant player on the Coosa River, basically everywhere, I would say, except for Logan Martin, just because there's not as much grass. They fluctuate the water as much. Do you still catch them on it there? I'm sure. Like I said, I can't prove it personally, but I think that the ways that the guys are going to catch them is going to be so entertaining to watch. That obviously we're not going to get the giant stringers that we got at Fork, but like, to me, I think this tournament's going to be fascinating to watch. And also, with your train of thought, I'm really excited to hear your picks. I'm really, really excited to hear your picks.
Hey, they could put me down in the 60th percentile. Who knows? Or they could just be. But there are some buckets that are problematic in fantasy fishing, and I'm not going to hold any punches about it. They're problematic. It's very hard to pick some guys. And to be honest, I'm at the midway point of the season, and I've been sitting at around the same percentage, and I'm either going to jump into the 90s or I'm going to fall back a little bit further, and it's just one of those two. I might go like Kyle's day 1 at Fork, or I might go like Kyle's day 2 at Fork. It just depends in fantasy fishing, but it can have those swings. So I'm going to put you on the spot. You go first. Bucket A, give me your pick. That's the top 20 in our Angler of the Year standings.
Just to add on what you were just saying, I went from 96 percentile to 86 in one day. So that was tough. Anyways, bucket A, let's move on. We're not living in the past. Bucket A, for the first time all season, believe it or not, I'm going with Brandon Polnick. I don't. Okay, so like it's one of those feel things. Granted, you could probably pick Brandon Polnick in almost any event, and really good chances he's going to catch them. So I mean, it's not like a going out on a limb kind of thing. At the time that I picked him, I'd have to see what it looks like now. At the time that I picked him, he was actually relatively low picked, at like 9%. Yeah, 8.8%. So I'll take that all day long with a guy like Brandon Polnick, who, let's be honest, kind of the way my thought on this is he's a guy that can get up in the dirt, fish shallow as good as anybody, swim jigging, frogging. He can do that. But Brandon Pollock's the kind of guy that finds that sneaky spot, like might find that spot up the river where there's like a little current break where, some guys pass it up or, obviously this, I made that pick before all this heavy current, like I said, makes him a little more predictable. But I just feel like Brandon Polnick's a guy that this time of the year is always deadly. I always think of he's not, the Alabama swim jig, guru like some of these guys are, but back to like Toledo Bend, Chad Spawn. Every other cash is catching a 4-pounder, 5-pounder. Good with a frog.
Row there for a minute.
Yeah, insane. And then he had like 9 in the live well at one point too.
Yeah, probably.
But,
like
I'm just kidding.
Sorry for that.
Sorry, Paul. I don't know. I just like him because he's so well rounded. I think some guys their styles might set up well for this, but they probably wouldn't have a backup plan. I think Polnick might have a couple different things to run during a tournament like this. And like I said, at 8.8% with a couple of guys eating up a heavy percentage in this bucket, I was like, I'm going PP.
Well, it's what's crazy is that the most deadly angler on this body of water, the one who has been sponsored by Fish Neely Henry Lake Tourism, is not even close. Like
7.7.
Yeah, like the 5th, 6th, 7th highest picked angler in the bucket. It's very balanced out this time. Only
it is.
Angler, only 20%. Only 2 more anglers other than that guy, over 10%, and then everybody else is that's probably not worth picking, but any guys that are I would consider more highly picked are
notable
after that. And I'm talking about Matt Herron had fished Neely Henry Lake on his jersey for the last couple of years. And this is one that's not far from him. He knows how to fish it. And to be honest, you're going to be shocked. I'm really picking a lot of flippers, and I'm picking a lot of guys that are going to short string some fish and that are going to fish tight to the cover, and they're going to do that. And I did not pick Matt in this bucket. And I don't know. I don't want to, I'm not going to jinx him. I don't believe in that. But like, it's setting up too good for it to be that easy for the local favorite. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you typically being the local, you like, yeah. I mean, and to your point, I mean, historically, I think most locals will tell you this in an elite tournament, and statistically, like the home field advantage really plays in when it's tough because you know how to adjust in those tough conditions. Like you said, if it gets really good, obviously that home field advantage doesn't play as big. A la Justin Atkins at Pickwick. I mean, it got like good for a lot of people. And it just happens. I mean, it happened to Lee Livesey the first time we went to Fork. It just naturally happens that way sometimes. And I'm with you. I'm the same way. That's why I didn't go with him. But sorry to interrupt. I just think that's a really good point.
It's difficult to pick some of those guys sometimes, and I was kind of hoping he was a higher percentage so I could use that as my reasoning and not picking him.
Right.
I totally trust Matt Herron, but it's not like he's the only local. I mean, he could pull up to that magic tree that he likes to flip. Canterbury might know what it is. West Logan might know what it is. There's plenty of people that could know that stuff as well, and it could get fished a whole lot more than he would hope in practice, especially for guys going and trying stuff. And so I went with Kyle Welcher. I think that this is a great time of the year for that young man. Whether it's moving baits like a swim jig, like a chatterbait, like a square bill, like a top water, or if he goes and flips trash mats with a punching rig, or he's flipping a jig on those laydowns and whatnot, and those bluff banks or those undercut banks. I just feel like this is one. Okay, so I haven't had an event on the Elite Series since Welcher started, which albeit was last year and this year. I haven't looked at an event and been like, Kyle Welcher can win this event. he has really had a shot to win a couple events. But I've never really thought of one where like the time of the year is setting up right, his knowledge of these types of fisheries is setting up right, and then his style is going to play into that as well. I think that's a perfect storm here. He knows the Coosa River. He might not know Neely as much, but he knows those types of fisheries in Alabama. Obviously, just living a little bit south of Neely Henry in that region, Opelika. Uh, and then his style setting up for it, flipping, power fishing, moving. And I think that we will see a lot of guys split their days, not just their or split their hours, not just split their days of the tournament. I'm going to go spend a time in this part of the lake and then that part of the lake. They're going to spend hours certain places. He's going to go up the river from takeoff for the first hour, run down the lake and fish for 2 hours, run back up when the generation schedule. And I feel like this is a time of year that you can run a lot and not get in trouble. And so I feel like it suits his run and gun style. So I'm picking Welcher. 12% of the people are picking him as well. The second highest angler in that bucket to only Seth Feider, the Angler of the Year leader. So I had to go a little bit high percentage there, but 12's not too bad for me. And I really do think that this could be I think Welcher should make a top 10. I do. I feel like all the baits that are going to play are his style. And the run and gun on the Coosa River sometimes – it can really be the deal. You go spend 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there.
Believe it or not, in my fantasy story, that's my solid secondary selection. So every bucket I pick like basically a backup. And to your point, I think that's a great point. Stylistically, this tournament, every single thing that should play are his exact strengths. I mean, really are. I mean, every single one of them. So like you said, I'm with you on that pick. I think that's good. If we're ready to move to bucket B, yes. I feel like surely we're going to share the same bucket B pick.
I don't think we will. I really don't think we will.
Wes Logan.
No. I didn't pick him. I didn't pick Wes Logan.
So I went with Wes Logan. Fairly high percentage, not comparatively to a couple of the guys in the bucket. Yeah, two guys in the bucket.
11's even if 11 is the leading percentage of a bucket, that's not high.
Super, not high.
20, 22 up, that kind of thing.
Agreed.
But maybe the rank in the bucket percentage wise, he's not too far down there. But yeah, a solid conglomerate, picking him contingent.
So Wes Logan's my boy, big time my boy. I've fished with Wes a couple times on the Coosa River since moving down here. I know how much he's looked forward to this event. I actually covered him at Pickwick, and we were talking about Atkins, and we're just talking about how it was a tough run for him there at Pickwick. Super surprising to everybody. And I told him, I said, well, you'll get to know what that feels like here in a few months or a couple months. And sure enough, he's going to, because more or less this is one of his home lakes, just like a few guys in the field. But it was kind of a saving grace, because in bucket B, there's so many other guys that, could, potentially be big players, that he didn't get nearly the percentage love that I thought he would, which, like you said, regardless, even if that was the bucket A or the highest picked angler in the bucket, like, it's not that bad. But
hey, I said, where's all the Coosa River love at? And I ended up finding bucket C. I know where the Coosa River love went to.
You ain't gotta go far. But I don't know. I just think stylistically, same thing. Like I said, having spent time with Wes, I feel like I have a better feel for his strengths and the things that he's, really, really good at, more than probably any other elite guy, because obviously you can cover him and watch him. But when you get in the boat with somebody and watch, how they methodically pick apart different things. Once again, it goes back to the Coosa River thing. I think the Coosa River as itself is kind of a niche. Every single lake kind of has its own niche, which is a weird thing to explain and put into words. But coming from Arkansas, moving down here, I figured that out real quick, because I thought I could do the same things that I would do on the lakes that you and I have fished together for the last few years. And I've fished for my entire life. And that has absolutely not been the case. They definitely fish very unique. And a guy like Wes Logan that's had a good year to this point, sitting 24th by, a couple events where he's really close to making the cut. I just think he's gonna. I think this kind of plays into Wes Logan's favor too. Although we're sitting here talking about him right now, I think he's going to go under the radar considering how much of a home Blake this is to him, which I think is a great thing. Think about how much publicity and how much love Atkins got before Pickwick. All that does is just add more and more pressure to you. I think Wes is getting the benefit of the doubt here with all the other Coosa River guys and is not getting that much pressure. And like I said, I mean, I just think stylistically, how good he is on the Coosa, I just think to me that's my no-brainer pick. I knew I was going to pick him, whatever bucket he was, but at the beginning of the season. That's my pick.
So I didn't pick Wes Logan because dun 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 under pressure. I think that we might not do it, but he is gonna put some major pressure on himself to perform.
Agreed.
And boo, I have been there before, and it's super hard to imagine how anglers will handle pressure. You know, will a Canterbury put too much pressure on himself? Will a Heron put too much pressure on himself? Those are wily veterans that have been somebody in the sport for a while. Wes Logan is pretty new to being a somebody, and to have one in your backyard, man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one to handle. And so I just imagine you get pulled in a lot of directions. So I don't think he's going to do as great as we would expect maybe 2 weeks ago. Just because when we get to tournament week, you get pulled in different directions. You have a lot of support for sure, but you got a lot of pressure to perform too, because you do know, hey, this is the last one I got a local advantage on. I got this one. We got Guntersville. We got Classic. We got 2 up north. I got to make hay here if I want a shot to win. And sometimes those locals don't lay up and they go for the win, and it burns you. And we've seen that. Weirdest thing, Pickwick. Atkins sucks. Mosley gets second. Flip-flop for the Open. Atkins almost makes the final day. Mosley sucks. Like, it just doesn't make sense sometimes when you put pressure or you get too comfortable so you can go free ball and wilding out a little bit. It doesn't work out. So I didn't pick him. I picked Brandon Lester. Lester. I really think he could pick up a flipping stick with the best of them. He could pick up a shaky head with the best of them, which is the weirdest thing when like some of the Alabama guys are like, don't talk about the shaky head. The thing's deadly. And I'm like, and it catches big ones there sometimes. But it's also because of his momentum coming off an Opens top 10. I remember in the heyday of Brandon Lester, like 16 minutes ago, it seems, when he was getting a top 20 in every event he fished, Opens, Elites, it did not matter. It was basically he was making the top 10 of the Elites, almost winning, and he would make the top 10 in the Opens and almost win. And he was stringing them together. He got a top 10 at Pickwick. And I feel like he's getting a little bit of a deal. Had a little bit of time there where maybe sponsors weren't flowing in, and it kind of just was stagnant. He lost some deals. He wasn't really gaining a lot of deals. Not that affects you, but I feel like he got home from Fork, had a little bit of a refresh with his family, went to Pickwick, did his business like he's supposed to on the Tennessee River, got a top 10, and I think he's going to roll into Neely Henry with more expectations on himself. But I really do think this stylistically, it could be good for Lester and momentum wise. I really do believe in that sometimes, and I feel like he's got a new title sponsor just a couple events ago, got a top 10, and I feel like everything's going to start gelling for Lester as we go into Guntersville, the Classic, and even Opens later in the year in the up north swing. So I'm picking Brandon Lester in bucket B, and he's only 2.7%, and I'm good with that. You got Stetson at 6, Cobb at 9, Kennedy at 26, Logan at 11, Swindle at 18. Those are really the guys. Robertson at 5. Robertson did well there. For note, if you don't like Logan, if you don't like Lester, Robertson did well at Neely Henry. Got second, I believe.
Second, yeah. Yep.
Almost beat Cody Bird. I think it was just a couple ounces or maybe just a pound even or something like that. Barely missed out on the Classic. Got kind of didn't he? I think he went ahead and won the next Open at Cherokee. He came up so close at Neely, went ahead and won the next Open at Cherokee. But anyways, he's a solid pick there. And if you wonder why a Kentucky boy has some love there, most recent finish there, most recent experience the elites might have there is anyone fishing the opens. He did well there last year. So I'm gonna move it over to bucket C, where it gets real. It's starting to taste like Tums in bucket C because it gets real chalky real quick with the picks there. And it, I don't know if you picked him, but 47% Scott Canterbury, the highest picked angler for Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing. And bucket C, he is toting the mail there with overwhelmingly the most. Brian New has experience there from the opens. He's at 10%. Didn't pick either one of those. My guy, 0.5%. I'm picking Caleb Kufal because he's going to have that mousetrap hook set with his jig. I mean, he's just going to, and then he's going to swing him right in the boat. But it's his comfort. And if he can lock a flipping jig in his hand and flip cover, I think that he's going to be content. And so I think that this could be one that you wouldn't expect a guy from Wisconsin to do well in, but I feel like he could come down and make this place his home.
That is an interesting pick. I dig it. However, I did go high percentage, not Scott Canterbury high percentage. Kind of one of those deals, though. I really think Scott Canterbury is going to catch him. I really, really do. I think there's no question he will.
Scares me.
I mean, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't. But I went with Brian New. So not necessarily based on fishing the open there. Also, are we even sure he even fished that open? I think he only fished the Easterns, right?
No, he fished them all. He won the open.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's right. What am I talking about? Yeah, he won the Falcon rods. Why? Yeah, I don't know. I remember him talking about he just jumped in that first one, and then once he won it, I thought for some reason he just fished the Eastern.
No, yeah, he signed up. He signed up for all.
Signed up for all.
Yeah.
Gotcha. For some reason, I was thinking he didn't even sign up for the Centrals.
I like.
So I don't even know,
and I know why you're picking him, and it sounds like my bucket A pick.
Just a stylistic thing. I mean, I think that the exact same thing, my thought process when I wrote my story about it, same thing you were talking about with Welcher. Running and gunning. Dude might be a rookie by Elite Series qualifications, but probably top 5 in the world at running and gunning style fishing. And he runs it hard. I've seen it. He runs that boat as hard as it'll go. But I and just stylistically, I think that style of fishing, just like you said with Welcher, should set up perfect for this event. I don't naturally consider him like a big flipper, like, that kind of thing. But as far as swimming a jig, top water, just moving, covering water, something I mentioned in my story was I could easily see him getting, a handful of stretches that are productive and just being able to rotate and know when those places are good. And that's just kind of one of those things that certain guys just have a knack for. And I think a Brian New in this tournament, I think can really catch him. And kind of like you said, it was. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in. I think it's like some of those guys like to catch a fish and they want to stay there and catch more. And sometimes on the Coosa River, it seems like you can catch one and then you need to run and you go and be okay with catching one here, one there, one here.
There's no doubt.
And I think that's like with Welcher and New, I think that they're good with that.
And like you said, I think this time of the year, that's so true. As where if you talk about some lakes, a few weeks from now, a month from now, it's so spot specific. You hear G-Man talk about guys that are really good, like area or spot fishermen, like guys that can really milk a spot for all it's worth, that kind of deal. I think the same can be said for the guys that have that knack for running and gunning and covering new water. And like you said, being able to up and move and not try to like make something it's not, if that makes sense. So, I mean, same reason that you picked Welcher, you're spot on. That's exactly why I'm going with Brian New and bucket C.
Well, give me your bucket D pick because I like that. And I didn't pick him because I don't know if you can go to the poker table with two of those guys. Like I can't go with New and Welcher in my back pocket because I'm going to get burned by one of them. So I'm going to pick one of them and ride with the other. I picked New. He was really great for me day one. Had no idea he sucked at sight fishing. Didn't do well at day 2. That kind of burned me bad. He's the one sucker that hurt me. Like I have every event, one angler hurts me, and he hurt me. So I'm not mad at you, Brian, but I'm gonna pick a guy who's similar to you and not you.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Honestly,
I'm just really
I felt like
disappointed.
my hopes up.
Okay, so Bucket D, going back to the Coosa River Magic, Clint Davis. Think Clint Davis, obviously fairly high picked at 9%. Once again, that's really not all that high. Thank God for Justin Atkins being picked at 30%, which is reasonable. I think that some people would just see Alabama and Justin Atkins being the hammer that he is and think that's a great pick. But that's something that I don't think people realize is how good he is on the Coosa, even though he's not a Coosa guy. You covered him winning an Open on the Coosa River, finished in the top 25 in both of the Opens, I believe, last year on Lay and on Neely Henry. Finished well in both of those tournaments. I can remember talking to him at Lay, and he just talked about how comfortable he is fishing the Coosa River. So 30% is pretty high, but a guy that has grown up fishing the Coosa River, I marveled at his videos of catching giant spots on a swim jig in December for years and years. Clint Davis is the Coosa River guy. I mean, he really is. And for me, at 9%, he's probably the second highest, I would guess. No, third highest in the bucket. I just think Clint Davis is, once again, going back to that knowledge of the Coosa River, I think that's going to play this tournament. And that's why I'm going with Clint Davis and bucket D.
Well, I didn't pick Davis either. I think we're going to go a clean sweep of 5 anglers apiece and not duplicate. I'm going to call that a little early. I don't think our bucket E's are going to match at all. That's all I'm saying. But and people are going to say I'm crazy for my roster, my 5 anglers this week. Like I'm trying too hard to be off the beaten path. But there's a I guess a reason to the madness. But I looked at some guys. I looked at a Davis, and I'm like, man, do I want to use him now? Not that I can use them and lose them, like in Drain the Lake.
It's not Drain the Lake.
It's not Drain the Lake, but I don't pick guys back-to-back events in from a 5-person lineup because it just messes with me if they get in a bad rotation or whatever. I didn't like Atkins' percentage, even though he did learn some stuff from Wes for sure about Neely. There's some other great anglers in there. I was going to pick a Daryl Gleason. Daryl was doing very well on day 1 at Neely Henry last year in the Open. That was in the fall, though. Was it a lucky spot or is it a pattern? I kind of, went through my brain on that one. I decided to pass over him. Kenta Kimura, I was like, he did well. He was on camera the final day, had a shot to win that event in the pouring down rain as well. It seems like every time we go to Neely, it just dumps rain. And so I was wondering about that pick. I see Jamie Hartman there at 5%. Not really sure why on that one, to be honest. I don't know why people picked him. I think, honestly, when you look down the list, there's so many random options that people went with some familiarity, even if it doesn't fit. And Clark Winlet at 3% or so. Then you have Zaldane. You have 2 guys taking up 56, 57% of the picks, 26% for Zaldane and 30% for Atkins. And I just didn't want to pick those 2 guys either. I just didn't. So I picked all that to say I picked Jake Whitaker. Urgency. He's got to catch him. Man, he loves throwing a frog, and he doesn't get to do that much in elites. It doesn't seem like by the time it gets warm enough, we're on lakes that it's not conducive for. And I think it's conducive right now for him. I think he's great with spotted bass as well. He's even great with those lower weight events. Not that this is going to be low, but you give a North Carolina boy a chance to shine with 11 to 14 pounds a day, and they can make it work. Also, flipping wise, I feel like he could flip a jig. And if he did have to go down lake and fish docks, that's what he loves doing. That's what he does so much. So
Sure.
It'll depend on where, when we pick all these guys, not knowing if maybe he's invested his whole practice above Gadsden in the river. I don't know, but I know their styles and you try to predict that. So 4% urgency. He's a great spawn and post-spawn angler. He never found him at Fork. He never found big ones on the bed in practice. He went into that one knowing he was walking into a boxing ring with one arm behind his back, and he lost a couple chiclets in his mouth. Made a little bit of a comeback on day 2, was able to gain some points there. But stylistically wise, spotted bass in play, the techniques that'll play, I feel like this could be when Whitaker turns it around a little bit. For as crazy of an up and down season as he's had, for stuff that's out of his control, stuff that's in his control, just pure innocent mistakes, he's only like 80 points from the Classic with 4 events left. Very doable. So you know that from 43rd to 73rd is only 80 points between 40 anglers. That's not bad at all. So I think he's going to turn around this week, and he's going to figure that out. And so he's my bucket D pick. Now, bucket E. It's not a drum roll, please. This is kind of going to be like an accordion, please. I don't know what we're about to get into here for bucket E. But dang, this might be one of the toughest bucket E's I've ever had to pick. And
I agree.
Holy cow. There's some guys that are really high percentage guys because they got Alabama tagged in their name. And then you got a Connecticut guy. He's never been on the Coosa. I don't know. And then you've just got some guys who have, honestly, if we're being 100% transparent here, they hadn't caught him in 16 events, not just this year. They just hadn't caught him last year. They're just in a rut, and they can't get out of their own way. Whether it's the Opens, whether it's the Elites, it gets to you. It wears on you mentally. I was just watching softball in the house with Sarah. She's one of the best softball players in the state of North Carolina when she was in high school. And I said, what's the deal? This girl went 45 pitches and had 2 hits hit off of her. And 5 pitches, she's had 4 hits and 2 runs scored. And I said, she's either just losing her fundamentals and she's just trying to throw the ball as hard as she can, or she's just missing her mark and she's just lost focus. And we even talked about why some middle inning pitchers are great and they can't start, though, why they suck in the first inning. And she said it's all mental. At a certain point in fishing, it is entirely, maybe it's 50% ability, 10%, 20% opportunity, and 30% mental. But at a certain point, it becomes 50% ability and 50% mental. And it just gets to be too much. Sometimes it feels like you're overthinking the simplest things. And so there's a lot of that going on in bucket E, I feel, looking at the guys. So I'm going to go I'm going with a jig flipper. I ain't never seen a man catch a bass on anything else in his life. I'm going with Rob Dye because I have never seen him catch a bass on anything else but a jig. And I expect him, this is the event. He literally circled it on the counter and said, flip a jig all day without feeling guilty. Swim a jig all day without feeling guilty. And I feel like Rob Dye, he's had some really good events doing that. Santee, even when it was only catching 3 fish in a day, he'd get that kicker bite. It's hard to beat a Norman angler, hard to beat a Lake Norman angler when he's got a jig locked in his hand all day long, flipping docks or flipping cover. So
I'd say there's got to be some docks to flip. I mean, there definitely is.
There's about $1 billion on Norman, and bottom end of Neely's got him, and then even laydowns galore. Above Norman on the 150 bridge, there's a lot less docks, a lot more laydowns. Gets real skinny up there as well, and Neely is very similar in that aspect. So yeah, Rob Dye, I'm gonna go with him. I think that 0.5% is expected. I mean, there's no reason anybody else should pick him higher on the Coosa River, but for the baits that should play, give me a little dip of Rob Dye.
Well played. I'll be honest. I'll just be straight up honest here.
Don't tell me your bucket E is blank right now.
No. Oh, that's kind of what I'm getting at. I will say I have not switched a single pick in fantasy fishing from what I write my story on, typically, nearly 2 weeks before the tournament, to now. There is a really good chance I change bucket E last second just because I am so unsure of who I want to pick. Like you said, it's not worth really like getting into because the reality of it is these are all good anglers. But like you said, it's a slippery slope when you get, same positive momentum works the same way as negative momentum. I don't guess you can even call it momentum, but like it's a slippery slope. I mean, because like you said, each event that you don't catch them, it adds more and more pressure. That
Especially to cut
urgency that you were talking about, it heightens even more when the urgency is not to make the classic, it's stay on the elites. It's, there's a lot of things at stake. So it's always tough this time of year picking in Bucket E because, like you said, there's so many factors, so many variables going on with all these guys.
and your heart goes out
And
to
then
them, you know.
no doubt, no doubt. I mean, because there's absolutely no doubt. It's not a thing like we're just sitting here making fun or laughing. It's just there's just not there's not one person that stands out as like somebody that would be a Coosa River like guy other than to me Bill Weidler, and that's not who I'm picking right now. It's a good chance
well,
it is very high
as well. But I will say, it's just like every NBA player that's eighth on the bench. They are the best freaking player that's ever came out of their high school, ever came out of their county, ever came out of their region. They were all state, all district. I mean, these guys went through the ringer regionally and they beat down other anglers. They go nationally to the Opens and they qualify with ease and they get to the elites. And it's every All-American facing you. Of course, you're going to look like you don't know what you're doing because at a certain point, somebody's got to finish last at every event. And you just don't want it to be you. And sometimes it's you a couple times in a row and you're like, what am I doing?
It puts you in a hole big time, and that's how you end up in Bucket E. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's not us joking about it. I mean, it's just the way it works. Especially once you get to this point of the season, you see, like we've talked about, every event prior to this, and you can still make the case for a handful of guys. Paul Mueller, some of the guys that have been really consistent over the course of their Elite Series career. You just have a bad year. I mean, it happened to John Cruz last year. I mean, it just happens. So that's about all you can say about that, or it's all I'm going to say about that. Right now, I've got Chris Groh. Lower percentage comparatively at 2.1. Once again, I mean, honestly, I look at Bucket E and I didn't even try to play percentages at all. I just am trying to pick somebody that I think suits up well. And like I said, and it's really a good chance that I'll switch to Bill Weidler. And I was transparent about that in my story that good chance I'll switch it because he really is a great swim jig fisherman. Lives just down the road from where we live here in Birmingham. I mean, definitely is a Coosa River guy. With that being said, like it just puts a lot of pressure on you, and you add the pressure of having to catch them just for the sake of getting out of this rut, and then the added pressure of this being not necessarily one of his home lakes, but definitely a lake on the same chain. It's a lot of pressure. That's what makes me a little hesitant to pick him. As for Chris Groh, I do view him as a good swim jig fisherman. I know he's a big dirty jigs guy, likes throwing that swim jig. I watched him actually do it at Fork. Wasn't necessarily covering him, but he came through the same area, swimming a jig. And when I was picking Bucket E, if we're being honest, that thought just came in my head. I was like, maybe he can translate that to a place historically that's yeah, right. He checks all the boxes. I'm sitting here watching him throw a swim jig, and he's definitely, he knows what he's doing with it clearly. And you go to a place where naturally the fish should be eating a swim jig. That's my pick. I don't think I can get too much more in depth with it. It's just kind of a feel thing. Those fish at Fork, although I'm sure there were plenty of fish caught on a swim jig, when they're like actually spawning locked down, it's hard to get them to bite a swim jig or something moving a lot of times. But I think these fish will be way more apt to eat a swim jig, and I think that's the strength of his. So we're going with Chris Groh for now, at least.
Yeah, and what hurts my heart the most about Groh is that something happens every event that I've never had happen in my life, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, time on the water allows stuff to happen, but it just seems like every event something happens. And I thought maybe after Fork, he's missed 2 cuts in the elites just within a good keeper away. You're just right there. And you either weigh in 4 on a day and you like, oh, that 5th keeper would have did it, that kind of thing. That's what it seems like sometimes in the last 2 events, the Sabine and Fork, that's what it was. And then I'm like, well, let me see how he picks it up at Pickwick, a place he was just a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago or whatever for the elites. A place that it should be fishing all right, coming off similar conditions as shad spawn wise, those types of things. He'll get something rolling there. And to weigh in 10 pounds on day 1 when everyone caught him. It did get tough on day 2 and the weights dropped considerably. for it to be like 25 pounds or something, 23 pounds leading day one, and it'd only be 58 to win 2 more days later, it got tough. But on the day that everyone caught him to only catch 10 pounds, he could have lost them all. You just don't know. But it seems like there's something. It's like he is the most positive guy that has negative weight on and energy on his shoulders. Like, it's like, I'm going to go out and catch him tomorrow. And you like feel the negativity weighing on him, but he's saying positive things. And so it breaks my heart. It's tough to just kick that schneid. So, Grow, I totally get why. His ability-wise, a lot of these guys have great ability. You can go down the list and say, not familiar with the Coosa. A seasoned angler, maybe a little too old to consistently catch him. Good ability, doesn't make great decisions. You can totally evaluate some of these anglers like that.
Sure.
Great angler having a terrible year, and you don't know when it's going to stop. So that's just us being completely honest about it. And I love every single one of these guys, because at the same thing, when you're on the 12th fairway on your final round of the season of the PGA Tour, and you got to birdie the next 3 holes to maintain your PGA Tour status, that freaking sucks. And that weighs on you big time. And as soon as you don't do it, you're like, well, maybe if I hole out the next 2, and you're like, maybe if I catch the big bass of the tournament tomorrow, we can make the cut. And then you're like, you're literally only swinging at high cheese every single time. Or you're trying to go driver off the deck on a hole you don't do that on. And you start just going big for no reasons. You make a long, long run just to do it, and it's why not? And so to me, and you can see it sometimes there's 96 limits and there's 2 dudes who don't catch a limit, and you're like, how? And then you look and they're just going for it, and it's so hard to sometimes connect on that. You're either gonna swing, that, and come down to one knee, or it's going over the fence, and sometimes it's I can do all the analysis for sports all day long,
Sure, I'm with you. And that's the thing, is when you get to this point in this season and you're in the position that these guys are in AOY standings, it like you said, it feels like you have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just string together a couple of good, like, hey, I made the cut, but like barely's, because they just, it makes you feel like they're not worth as much. As where, like, rather than chipping away at it each tournament, it's like, oh, I gotta win one. I gotta make a top 10, like, for more reasons than just AOY. Financially, money. There's so many things that, like, naturally we try to stay out of, in-depth reasons why, but it makes it tough. It really does, because these guys, like you said, all have the ability. And it's just like, a lot of them are going to come out of it, and you just don't know when, because like you said, you just have a bad year and it happens.
I thought about the other day, and I'm like, man, if we were any other sports league, they hammer on their top guys all the time for making mistakes, but we only speak highly of anglers, and we have a relationship with them. We have a personal connection. We love these guys. They obviously pay entry fees, and they're heavily invested in it. But I think sometimes they don't mind sometimes the criticism, because they are doing it themselves, and they want to know if someone else is seeing the same things in them. Sure. I'm not saying they're asking for it or anything like that, but we kind of get like, oh God, we said something bad about them, or, we were talking about their fundamentals, or the way they set the hook, or the way that they drive their boat. But man, we really don't talk bad about these guys all year. And to be honest, at this point, you just got to be real with it. We're not picking a hot button topic to be negative on purpose. We're just completely being honest, because it is a dog-eat-dog sport. It's a performance-based deal. You catch them, we talk about you. You don't catch them, people forget your name. But when we do have to talk about you, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. And so that is Bucket E at this point in the season. I'm not waving them off. I'm waving this gnat out of my face. Probably thriving off my hot breath right now. But real quick, before we do Drain the Lake, give me some hyper history. We're going to go rapid fire. And when I say rapid fire, I don't even care why you're saying hyper history. You just tell me what it is.
You can hardly say history, because there's just not. I'm just looking at this board, and there's just not enough history to say.
Okay.
Hype.
Fighter.
Hype for
fighter.
I'm saying both because I mean Welcher. You'd think history, but I mean still being as far south as he is, it's not history on the lake. I'd say hype based on his technique, on his fishing style, not on history on the lake. Let's say that.
Kennedy and Swindle.
Hype and hype.
Man. Canterbury and New.
History hype.
Okay, I was already doing it. Atkins Haldane.
Let's say history hype. And once again, I'll justify my picks here. History hype. I guess history. But we don't. I mean, I don't even. Kelly J, obviously, another one further. Yeah, further south. I mean, does he fish the Coosa? I'm sure, but that far up on the Coosa, probably not.
He works much to fish the Coosa. He barely.
Yeah, he's a hard worker.
These guys can have hype, but for historical reasons. That's why I was saying there's a way of doing it, or history, as in like fighter doesn't have experience on Coosa River, but historically this season he is on a roll, that kind of thing. So
and okay, like Swindle, another one. It's not just like hype because it's Swindle, because Swindle typically always has a higher player percentage, just being the personality and like the well-known, well-loved angler that he is. But also he's definitely got history on Neely Henry. Guys fished every lake in Alabama probably at least 100 times a piece, I feel like, at this point. So I mean, it's a mixture of both, but I'm saying hype and once again like fishing style. So when I say fishing style, that's like, to me, I'm combining that with hype and not history. Kind of the same way with Welcher, kind of the same way with New. I mean, it's more their style, the hype of their style, not like the history they've had. But anyways.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make it all disappear. I actually created this game, Kyle, just to put you on the spot, so I'd have dirt on you when English were like, I love that Kyle Jessie. I was like, man, he says you're hype all the time. People picking you. Ain't no reason they're picking you. It's just hype.
I don't even feel like it's a bad thing. Hype's a bad thing. If you've got hype, you're doing something right. It's not a bad thing.
Well, there's some anglers that have high percentages that I'm always like, who are picking these guys? Like,
right. No, I'm with you.
Guy never fished this lake before in his life.
Like what are we basing this off of?
Exactly. We went a little long, but we had some really, really solid, wholesome discussion there for fantasy fishing. Now we're going to jump over to Drain the Lake, which I'm very, very similar percentage-wise for Drain the Lake and Rapple and Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing. But I'm much more hopeful for Drain the Lake because it is strategic and you got to pick your guys. And when you pick them, it's super crucial. Obviously, getting points is important, but picking the guys when they do well in Drain the Lake is important. And you get bonus points for it. I picked Lee Livesey at Fork and got double points for it. If you pick the winner, I did not know this, had no idea. If you pick the winner and they win, you get the normal points that you would get for the other things like big bag of the tournament, leader, big fish, those types of bonus points. But you also get another 300 points off the top for picking the winner. So we got, instead of 345 for Lee Livesey, we got 645 for Lee Livesey. So that helped me go up the leaderboard really well at the end of Fork. And that's what you want. This is the name of the game, Kyle. You can explain a little bit more when I write down a few of my picks. But if you're going to pick a guy and burn him, he better get the dub. And that's gonna make it a lot easier, because some of the higher guys that beat us, I had 1,900 points and I'm 85%. Everyone over 2,000, I guarantee you they burned some smallmouth anglers for sure. The guys who won, you were king of the hill for Drain the Lake for the week one, and you burned every smallmouth angler in the book.
I told you the list of the guy that won the first Drain the Lake ever, and it was a list of guys that come the Northern Swing, you're gonna be like, where'd they go?
Yeah, I mean,
Seth Fighter, Paul, Nick. I mean, it was like every guy on the list was your heavy hitter that like you just burned up, and that's just the way it is. So, you swing for the fences on a tournament, and it works out for you. And then there's certain tournaments where you look back and you're like, man, there's a lot of guys I wish I had. Also, to be noted, the Classic coming up, triple points to the winner of the Classic.
Yeah.
So you better pick the winner if you're gonna win the Classic. Drain the Lake. There's no doubt you need to pick the winner.
I probably already picked somebody at Fork that's gonna win the Classic. I can't pick them.
I swear before you even said that, I wondered to myself, I said, did I pick Zaldane at Fork? I can't even remember. Like Zaldane is the first person that comes to head being from Fort Worth area. But I feel like I'm the same way. I had to have picked somebody in the Fork tournament.
For sure.
The Texas style should play both ways.
So I want you to give me 4 of your picks real quick, and then I'll give you my 4, and then we'll go through our second 4s.
So you and I have talked about this, but like you said, picking the winner, I think, is so crucial. Not I think, I mean it is, to success because of the double points. So when I pick my team, I'm thinking of guys that can win the tournament, right? Guys, obviously there's plenty of them that I didn't pick that I want to save, but first 4, Josh Strassner,
Woo!
Matthew Robertson, Bill Lowen, and Matt Herron.
Dang.
My first 4 in. First 4 in.
So it's hard for me because I picked for complete transparency. When I lock in a guy, I move on to the next bucket, guilt free, move on. I changed bucket E for Rapala. I had Shane Lineberger and I switched it to his roommate Rob Dye. And then for Drain the Lake, I took 1 or 2 guys off and filled them with other anglers because I was like, man, Classic, Gunnersville, and I didn't want to forget the Classic. I just don't want to burn too many guys before Gunnersville and the Classic, because then you can really, knowing that we have 2 Southern Lakes left and then 2 Northerns after this event, we'll have Gunnersville, the Classic, and then 2 Northern events. I can really start to distribute my anglers and go full out with it and gain steam at the end. So I had to take a couple guys off, and I took a Bill Lowen off, and I took a Matt Herron off, and I had Strassner has been on my mind more than Vicky Valancourt was on Bobby Boucher's mind. I mean, I had Strassner. He's my Rookie of the Year pick. He's leading it right now. We're going to the Coosa River where he fishes, and I'm like, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. But I didn't pick him. So first 4, if you can read this, I went. That's not Kelly J. That is KJ Queen. I feel like this is gonna be a good one for him. Flipping shallow, power fishing. I got Patty Walton. He sucks at Gunnersville, bro. Sucks at Gunnersville. I don't know how he's gonna do it at a Summer Classic. And up north is not necessarily his strongest suit. I could see him doing well because he's one of the best anglers my age, and he's one of the best anglers in the Elite Series. I don't know about up north how much I'm going to trust him over some of the other guys. So if I'm burning him at an event, I'm going to burn him on the Coosa River. He's really good buds with Justin Hamner, who lives down near Tuscaloosa, which isn't the Coosa River, but it's an Alabama river system that is it's not Tennessee River. It's just like the Coosa, basically.
Very similar.
A little bit of knowledge probably plays into that. He did fish Neely last year, I believe. I believe he fished the Centrals as well, but at least Hamner did. And was able to fish those. I also have Todd Otten, and I kind of picked him. He's roommates with Rob Dye as well. He's great with a chatterbait. He's a great dock fisherman as well. I feel like he could be one I could burn up here. Caleb Kufal. He is the only that I picked on my Rapala Bassmaster Fantasy Fishing team as I did on Drain the Lake. Normally, I don't like to go the same route. Like, I didn't pick Lee Livesey in my 5 angler lineup, but I picked him in Drain the Lake. So I bit that bullet. But Kufal, I'm picking him in both. I think that flipping's going to set up well for him. Probably going to be his worst finish of the year because I said that.
Okay, so going with my next 4, I went I'll be honest, the 4 you just picked, I'm surprised by, because there's to me there's a handful of guys that I think this is their best chance for the rest of the year to do really well. I think you're playing a little too conservative. I'll be honest.
Well,
I think you're playing a little too conservative.
You'll see if I'm going for it a little bit.
Fine. Fair enough. Okay, so my next 4, and I'm always saying that because I'm trying to justify my picks. My next 4, Clint Davis, Justin Hamner, as you just said, Wes Logan, and Steve Kennedy. So I'm going really heavy this tournament.
Man, Kyle's trying to win the Team of the Week award.
But, okay, historically, you look at every single pick in there, it's not like you could pinpoint any of those guys to be really great smallmouth fishermen. A handful of those guys didn't make the Classic. And yeah, Gunnersville, I think by the time that tournament rolls around, I've got my Drain the Lake set on that. Guys that I haven't picked, guys that are going to find them off the bank. I'm sure there'll still be plenty of shallow fish to be
Fluttered up with the eelgrass on the surface, all that jazz.
Oh, come on.
So,
I don't know. I've got it in my head. I've saved some guys specifically for that tournament. I don't know. I'm really confident with my Drain the Lake team. I think every one of those guys is going to make the cut. All 8. Mark it down.
wow.
Yep. All 8 of them.
So I had 2 bad ones at Fork that didn't do well for me. Same principle. I picked Chad Morgenthaler was the same principle I picked Mark Menendez. One of them finished top 6, the other finished bottom 6. So that's how it goes. And I just do not see every Coosa River angler doing it. Somebody has to suck on their home body of water or a body of water that's their style. And
not this time, baby. Not this time.
I'll be below Ronnie after this. So my next 4, Wes Logan. I picked him, okay, because people are going to save him maybe for Gunnersville because
he hates
the day
Gunnersville. Hates it.
I know, but he was the leader. That was the last.
Yeah, right.
He was the leader. Brandon Cobb, I think he's going to sling that dang toad-toter around, boy, and swim a jig. It's going to be his deal.
I can see it.
Ike's mini flip, Missile Baits mini flip, D-bomb. That's just going to be his deal. I got Taku.
What are you thinking?
I got a feeling Kenta Kamura, they run tight. Told him a little bit about Neely. I feel like Taku's going to do well. And do you really think that he's going to back up 3 top 10s in a row on smallmouth places last year with 2 top 10s up north this year? Maybe one of them. But the lake, the only time he's ever been in the St. Lawrence River, it was Lake Ontario. Guess what's not in play this year? Lake Ontario. Champlain, I mean, he ended up fishing around a lot of other guys. And so if he switches it up this year, I'm just saying he's a great angler. Didn't expect him to
live scopers
at
live scopers will live scope. And I'm a firm believer of that.
Hey, live scopers can try to live scope in that current on the St. Lawrence River as they drift as well, and they're going to be seeing gobies flinging all over their screen. Gobies everywhere.
Champlain is what I just think that's got to be the event.
Mark it down. If you're watching this show, you need to get a hobby at this point in the show.
You're right. If you're still
mark it down, baby. Kyle's already locked in one of his 8 picks for Raffle or for Drain the Lake. So I went a little bit. I switched it up. I didn't go all in on certain styles. I think Taku. I think Todd Otten. I think Patty Walt. I think those guys are a little bit different than my other picks, but my other picks are based off around the same things as well. So
I dig it. How long have we been going on this? I feel like for a while now.
It's probably the longest one, maybe about an hour, 5 minutes.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed it. And like I said, I really am looking forward to this tournament. I think this will be a really fun one to watch. 61-10. That's what I had. Okay. And I felt really good about that because I read a preview story with Matt Herron. Maybe it was his column, I'm not sure. And he said 61 pounds. Actually, no. It was our preview story for the website with Scott Canterbury. And this was after I already made my weight prediction. He said 61 pounds. So I was really happy with that. Hopefully that's the case. But that made me feel like I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, well, your 98 pounds at Fork didn't work out too well for you. It accomplished the goal.
I switched it.
Did you?
I told you I was going to switch it. I switched it to 108 pounds.
Oh, so you were close. Okay.
Yeah, I told you I was going to do that. I did.
I was at 120 and he had 112, so I'm okay with that. When you get over 100, if you're within 10 pounds, you're one bite away. One bite.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to break Dean Roas's record on the final day, and that was what my weight was going to be. I got 55.
Shame on 55-15. You said
55-15.
Okay.
I think Neely's big enough, but it can get real small in a real hurry. So I could see us switching leaders. I feel like the day 1 leader could drop and then regain the lead on day 3, and the day 2 leader could drop and then regain it on day 4. I feel like it could just be a flip-flop. A simple flip-flop of the takeoff order could make that cut line thick. I mean, thicker than
How many C's?
whatever's thick. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's a really good point, especially in these tournaments where like an early morning bite will play, which shad spawn obviously is an early morning deal. Um, that's a good point. I mean, okay, look at Pickwick, how volatile that shad spawn was during the Open. I mean, some of those guys that smashed them on day one go day two to those same areas where the shad spawn's going on, and it just doesn't happen. It
I
really
think
is
it was
volatile,
literally,
and that kind of thing.
I think it was won by Joey Nania, but I think it was won
Sure.
by an angler that busted their butt on the shad spawn each day, but it was just what they did the rest of the day to find them. And Joey,
Right.
giant on day one, helped carry his weight. Day two was stood tall and stayed strong. And then day three, he was able to bust that bag off shad spawn, and that helps, And so I do think time of year, takeoff order, the volatility of it. And if you're looking at Neely Henry, last thing, if you're looking at Neely Henry, it actually has 2 dams that flow into it. I know it obviously comes from Weiss. I'm going to try to look at my map real quick and click and see what lake it comes from as well. If you know, go ahead and tell me. But Neely Henry flows from Weiss up to or down to Neely Henry, and it actually is 2 different places on Weiss. It looks like that has a dam that puts out water, um, to some extent. But that first dam you experience is the dam that we're worried about and concerned with, because once you get past that first dam that juts off to the left in the river, it gets so hairy. I don't think John Cox is going to go up there. I think like it's wow. Never mind. He's gonna go up there, but he's gonna rip something off his boat. But like Neely Henry gets pretty, but the raise in water level, if it stayed higher, which I know that place goes up and down with current flow, it gets a little hairy up past that first dam. So it's really that first dam that you see on the map is really where the barrier that a lot of guys go to. If they go much past that, they may not make it back for weigh-in. So
I'm looking forward to it, man. I really am. There's a lot of things at play for this tournament. I think that this is one of those tournaments that, okay, like Fork, you could look at it and you and I could tell everybody before the tournament started, and we did, that sight fishing was going to play a huge role. I think it's possible you go into a tournament like this and like guys catch them in different ways, and some of them might even be different than what we're thinking. Even though there's going to be certainly guys that catch them on the things that we've already mentioned, the swim jig, the frog, flipping, bait, like the typical Coosa River, baits. But I could easily see guys doing things that might surprise us in this tournament. Just find something off the wall, which, to me makes it so fun, because by the time we start rolling on live on day one, I mean, I feel like anything could happen, and we're going to be surprised, because let's be honest, by the time we start rolling, I think we're going to already have seen quite a bit of things, transpire in the first hour of live, whether or not it's with the 10 camera or the 6 cameras we've got out, or, there's going to be a lot of activity early, which I think, makes for a really fun day. And, that's one of those things. Maybe it's a guy that is able to get on that early morning bite and find something later in the day. It might not be the same pattern, obviously. A lot of times that's the case, but just find something to where you can fall back on and later in the day and maybe cull up a few times. Because I mean, obviously the shad spawn, a lot of times, as good as it is and as fun as it is, it can drain the rest of your day because you try to make it work too long. You don't have anything really to back up on it. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a tournament like this. There's no doubt about that.
we're gonna see some guys drop the trolling motor about 100 yards from takeoff as well. That'll factor. I think that as we get to day 2.5 and day 3 and day 4, the field's going to come back from the far reaches of Neely, and it's going to go down around that takeoff region to a certain extent. Some late fish will be caught there as well, like you said. Our times this week, we're going to be starting Bassmaster Live 7 a.m. Eastern time. Normally it's 8 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll go to 3 p.m. Eastern time. But it's going to be 7 a.m. Eastern time to 2 p.m. Eastern time, a little bit earlier this week. We'll be going Facebook Live a little bit earlier than that. So it's about 5:40 Central time takeoff. I'm mixing up time zones here, but about 5:40 Central time for takeoff, 6 o'clock Central for Bassmaster Live. We'll be able to see Facebook as these guys leave the Gadsden landing right there. It'll be great watching that. You'll get some bonus coverage here. We always do, what is it? 7 hours of live. We have 3 hours on Fox Sports, 1 hour in the middle, and 3 hours on Bassmaster.com. That's kind of how it splits up. And we've been doing 7 hours. I think we've been doing, we'll do another 7 at least, but some days it might be a little bit more. Fox will still be the normal times that it is, but we'll go all the way up to check in for some of these guys. So it'll be good. It should be fun. A lot of fish catches. My favorite species in play this week, spotted bass. Let's get it. You ready, Kyle?
I'm ready, dude. Let's do it.
Awesome. We will see y'all, Neely Henry, for the Whataburger Bassmaster Elite.